Hello, everyone. This is the Faithful Life Podcast. I'm Matt Jacobson of FaithfulMan.com.
And I'm Lisa Jacobson of Club31Women.com. We're so glad you're here with us.
At Faithful Life, we explore what it means to be a biblical Christian in today's world, in our marriage, parenting, church, and culture.
It's real, raw, and relevant.
So let's get started. Hello, everyone.
Yes, hello, friends.
Hey, welcome back. We hope you had a great weekend together. And today we are going to talk about a great topic. We're going to be talking about the subject of servanthood. Are you a servant? Do you have a servant's heart? Do I have a servant's heart? We know Lisa has a servant's heart, so we don't even have to ask her.
Thank you, babe.
You know, for the serious believer, being a servant needs to be a big theme in our thinking. It's central to every important, healthy relationship that you have, whether it's your spouse, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with the other people within the church that you're walking with. It's central to what it means to be a Christian. The scriptures speak about servanthood an awful lot. And of course, Jesus Christ is our example as a servant. He came as a servant.
You know, I think we often think of ourselves as a servant. I know that I certainly do. As a busy wife and mom, that's part of my, I think that would be part of my at least silent descriptive word for myself. But today, what we really want to do is kind of get to the bottom of what it means to be a servant, biblically speaking. And on this podcast, we talk a lot about such things. You know, we talk about a husband's responsibility, calling to lay down his life for his wife and his family, and for a wife to yield her heart to her husband, or let's say moms, right? What we're doing to managing the home and how we're spending times with our kids. And all of that feels a lot like servanthood. But what does true servanthood look like? And as women, we can tell ourselves we're serving all the time. And if serving is defined as being busy and doing all the things, this is definitely true. We are busy, aren't we?
I like to say that moms feel like life is coming at them with the speed of a fighter jet and the chaos of a riot.
True story.
I know that you felt that way a lot, Lisa. In fact, I met a mom this morning at Starbucks. She has 3 young kids, and she's working at Starbucks. She just feels like she's dying. She talked about how overwhelmed she is and how much she gives and how much her life is all about what everybody else in her life needs. So she certainly feels like she's laying down her life. And the question is, are we? Are we laying down our lives truly in the biblical sense of real biblical servanthood?
Jesus himself came to serve. In Mark 10, we read about the quarrel between the disciples because James and John had asked to sit at Jesus' right hand and left when he rose to power. And at this time, they were thinking of Jesus as a physical king, throwing off the Romans. But then in verse 45, Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many." Jesus came to be a servant.
Right. And in John 12:26, Jesus says, "If any man serve me, let him follow me. And where I am, there shall also my servant be. If any man serve me, him will my Father honor." So if any man serve me, it's like, let him follow me. Let him follow my example. Walk out his life as I have done with mine. The Christian life is about being a servant, about laying down our lives for each other. And we have Jesus, again, as we said, as our example.
You know, I remember as a kid, as a young child, how I would look up at adults and I couldn't wait to be grown up so that I could finally have the freedom and do what I wanted to do because, of course, I had chores and schoolwork and all of that. And so I just looked at adulthood as that path to freedom where people would serve me instead of the other way around. Little did I know, right? In fact, it came back to haunt me because when I was as a mom, we had those young kids, and I remember one of our daughters came up to me and she said, "I can't wait until I'm a mom like you." And at first I was thinking, well, isn't that sweet? She just wants to grow up and be like me. Nice. And she said, "Yeah, I can't wait until I can drink tea and eat chocolate all the time, just like you." What in the world? Where did she get this idea? I don't know, but I get it because that's what as a child, that's what you think. But I found that as an adult, a wife, a mother, that all I did was serve more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, being a servant or actually walking biblically as a servant can be kind of tricky because from a galloping horse at 100 yards, you see the activity and you go, wow, that person is really doing it. That person is busy. That person's giving. That person's laying down his or her life. We can confuse doing with serving. We can confuse activity with actually serving. But as we're going to see, as we're going to talk about a little bit, serving has to do a lot with where my heart is and what is the focus of my heart. I find that there are two kinds of people, basically, when it comes to people who are willing to do, people who are willing to serve, people who are willing to do things for others. There's the person who's always positive and willing to serve, but that person is serving on his own terms. He's basically willing to fit the things that you need into his priorities and his plans and his own needs, wants, desires, and schedule. That person is serving on his own terms. And then there's the person who serves based on what other people need. And we need to ask ourselves, is the service that I am giving falling into the first category or the second category? What kind of servant am I really? What's really behind the service that I'm willing to offer, that help that I'm willing to give?
I think it would help if you flesh that out a little bit so it's kind of clear what the distinction between those two that you just laid out.
Well, the first person is serving on their own terms. They're not laying down their life for the other person. Serving on my terms is doing what I want, looking out for my needs, focusing on my priorities. It's about me. It's not about you. It's not about what you want. It's not about what you need. Certainly, this is not what Jesus did. Jesus didn't do his own will, even. He says, I came not to do my will, but the will of the Father. Jesus truly laid down his life. So when you're serving on your own terms, you're self-motivated. Jesus wasn't self-motivated. He was motivated by what the Father wanted him to do. When we're serving on our own terms, we're doing what we want to do, not what another needs us to do and needs us to be and desires us to do. In your acts of service, in your marriage, with your children, or maybe even in your church, are you just fulfilling your own will? Are you fitting other people's priorities into what your priorities are? Or are you truly laying down your life for others in obedience to God?
Yes, because the true servant's heart isn't about what I'm doing for someone else, serving them on my terms like you talked about. It's about loving the other person and sacrificing myself on the altar of what the other person needs and is meaningful to them, showing them the love of Christ. So we talked a minute ago about how busy moms often feel, and I hope the moms are listening, because how tired you are at the end of the day is not an accurate gauge of how you served your family. Serving and loving your children isn't about getting the next thing taken care of and crossed off your list. And I can tell you about this because I've walked this, just so you know. I have so been there. As a mom with a lot of young children, I really wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to do all those good mom things. So I cleaned the house, I cooked meals, we homeschooled, and baked cookies, did all the things that were on my list of what a good mom does. And so listen in carefully while I'm going to try to describe the difference between doing all these things for your kids and doing those things that are actually what your children need. Because I do hear this often, this kind of dilemma where, for instance, you're baking cookies with your child and you're doing it because this is what good moms do, right?
You're serving.
Right. And in the middle of this wonderful activity, your child has this total breakdown, meltdown, and you're thinking, what is your problem? Don't you see that I've got other things I could be doing, and here I am baking cookies with you? And I have compassion for that. But the problem often is that you're so busy doing these things for your kids, you don't realize that's actually not what they need. Your child needs you to just want to be with them, to love them, to enjoy them for who they are. And
not get through a project.
Right. And whether you're mindful of or not, you often it's a matter of like, this is going to look really good on my mother resume. I baked cookies with my child this week. When really the best thing for your child might very well be just sitting on the couch, snuggling, eating store-bought cookies, but not conquering the next thing on your list. And it's an important distinction. And your child won't be able to necessarily articulate the difference between those things, but he or she will feel it. And as they get older in life, they will be able to say, I felt like you weren't there for me, or you didn't enjoy being with me. And you're thinking, are you kidding me? I was with you all the time.
I served you.
Yes.
I was serving you all the time.
So it's worth some serious reflection on what are my motivations? And am I really doing things that I want to do or think should be done? Or am I doing the things that my child needs in his or her heart? Hey friends, I wanted to share a new book with you. It's by Sheila Walsh. It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And we've all experienced that moment where we wish we could start all over again. Maybe it's a marriage, friends, jobs, just a life you hadn't imagined. And yesterday can sometimes leave us stuck, sad, shamed, scared, and searching. But Sheila Walsh encourages the readers of her book to face the pain head on and then start again, right from where you are. She shares that when she discovered, I'm not good enough, and I'm good with that, everything started to change. In It's Okay Not to Be Okay, Walsh helps women overcome that same old rut of struggles and pain by changing the way they think about God, themselves, and their everyday lives. She shares practical, doable, daily strategies that will help women move forward one step at a time, knowing God will never let them down. And at the end of each chapter of her book, this is something I really appreciate. She has this extra assignment where there's a question or just something to think about, a scripture verse to meditate on. So there's a little bit of not just reading about her life and the things that she offers, but a chance for you to take it home and make it part of yours. And I just want to share personally some of the things that I appreciated about Sheila's book. Some things like her honest and personal stories. So it's not about just you out there. It's really about her own heart and struggles. And I don't know if you know much about her own journey, but it's a beautiful journey of redemption, which, we really emphasize here on the Faithful Life podcast. She also offers a very kind, encouraging approach, but truthful too. So it's a beautiful balance of bringing scripture back into the way we think and our perspective on ourselves and about the life that we live. So if you have a chance, check out her new book, It's Okay Not to Be Okay by Sheila Walsh.
Are you serving your child, in this case as a parent, are you serving your child on your terms, or are you serving your child for what they actually need? Mm-hmm. And the same is true in marriage as well. Are we serving our spouse on our terms, or are we serving on the terms of the person that we say we're serving, right? We think, hey, I did this thing for you, I'm serving you. But serving has to do with where it's coming from and why we're actually doing it, and frankly, even how we're doing it. Because serving on your own terms isn't serving at all. It's just an act of self-will.
So how about some examples of just, how that works in our marriage?
Okay, practically speaking, all right. Yeah. So let's just say I just sense, it's really time that Lisa and I spend some time together because, I'm supposed to do that, right?
Yes, you are.
Right? I mean, I'm supposed to show her that she matters to me. So it doesn't really sound like it in my voice, does it? Well, that's because I'm talking about this from the perspective of a person who's motivated from their own self-interest rather than the other person. So, but I'm thinking, you know what? I'm supposed to do this thing. So Lisa likes walking. So fine, we'll go walking. Let's walk on the river. So we go down the river and we're walking. I'm going a little faster than maybe normal. And I'm not really like seeking her out as a person. I'm just trying to accomplish this thing and get it done because I've got other things I want to do starting at 5 o'clock tonight. So here I am, quote unquote, serving my wife, doing something I know she'll love. And hey, you look at it on paper, it's like communism, it's great on paper, right? You look at it and you go, hey, I did it. I served her. I walked with her around on the river walk down on, by the old mill in Bend, and we did it. But I'm not really serving her. I'm not really doing this because I'm interested in her needs, what she desires. I'm serving her on my own terms because I've got an agenda and I'm going to fit her needs into that agenda. See, my eyes of my soul, they're really turned in on me and what I want rather than toward her and what she needs.
And I can always feel the difference between those two
sure.
when you're there and just enjoying and glad to be there with me versus I just have that if you have an agenda, you've got someplace you have to go or want to be, then I can tell, like you said, even just by maybe the pace of your walk or just where your head's at, you know. So I think that's a great example, actually. I could think of another one going the other way, and that is if I make a beautiful dinner for you and I make all your favorite foods, and I can especially remember this when we were a few years ago when we had lots of young kids at home, and I thought, okay, Matt's coming home from work and I'm going to have this great dinner prepared for him. And then you would call and say, hey, I got hung up in a meeting. I'm going to be an hour late. And I had everything timed perfectly so that when you walked in the door at the time you normally get home, everything would be ready. And so I would instantly go from loving, serving wife to super frustrated. And now you are in the way of what I planned to do. So by the time you got home, I was just so done.
Kind of had to watch my eyes in those moments to get scratched out.
But you know, when I think about that, I think, okay, Lisa, here's a moment of honesty. Was this really about loving Matt, or was this really about you making the dinner you were determined to have, and all disguised in blessing him? Yeah. It's something to think about.
Yeah. Well, and this is not to make excuses for the, ungentlemanly husband who is regularly late and doesn't care about his wife's offerings.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the anomalous circumstance we're talking about, not somebody who habitually is late and doesn't care.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true too.
But so what we're talking about, though, is serving on your own terms. And we have a perfect example of this early on in the Bible in Genesis. It's the story of Cain and Abel. A lot of people know it, but maybe you don't. So Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve. And God had required a sacrifice of them, and Abel went out and got a blood sacrifice, and he made sacrifice to God. His sacrifice was accepted. Cain went out, and the Bible says that he was a man of the soil, of the field. So he went out, and whatever he brought, it was the produce of the land. Maybe it was grain, maybe it was some beautiful tomatoes and carrots. I don't know what he brought, but he brought something that was from the soil. God looked at that sacrifice and rejected it. And Cain was so furious. So we know right off the bat that Cain brought the best of what he had because he was mad at God's response. If he brought his, secondary stuff that didn't matter, maybe moldy grain or something like that, he would go, well, I guess I got what I deserved. But he didn't feel that way. He was extremely angry that God did not accept his sacrifice. But what did Cain really do? What was the spirit of Cain animating him to sacrifice in a way that God did not accept? You see, God said that he clearly had made it known to them what he wanted. But Cain said, you know what? I'm going to serve God on my terms. I'm going to bring God my gifts my way. And God took one look at that and said, no, unacceptable. And the thing is, we should ask ourselves, am I serving on my terms? Am I serving on what I think should be, or am I serving on what someone else needs, desires, has asked for, and wants? Am I serving with a spirit of Cain?
I think the beautiful thing about serving others to meet their needs and not on your own terms is that it builds these beautiful, strong bonds of friendship and love. Serving your spouse in this way says, I love you. And serving your kids with this kind of heart says, I love you. You're bringing strength and depth and love to the relationships God has given you.
What kind of a servant are you in your home, in your marriage, in your parenting, at your church? What's animating your servanthood? Everything we do God's way is better. So if you want better relationships, start this week. Learn the true heart of servanthood. And remember, serving on your terms is just an act of self-actualization. It's all about you. Serving on the terms of others, meeting the needs of others, laying down your life for others is an act of giving and an act of love, because it's not about you anymore. It's about the other person and what that person genuinely needs.
And being a servant isn't optional for the believer. Not in marriage, not in parenting, not in relationships with others in and out of the church, and certainly not in our relationship with God. We are called to be servants. In John 12:26, Jesus says, if any man serve me, let him follow me. And where I am, there shall also my servant be. If any man serve me, him will my Father honor.
So, the question we need to ask ourselves this week, what spirit will animate the service that I will give in my relationships? Is it the spirit of Cain, serving on my terms? Or is it the spirit of Jesus Christ, who loved me and gave himself for me? So let's take a minute and just recap with today's takeaways.
First of all, just because you're busy doesn't mean you're truly serving.
Service on my terms is self-actualization. It's an act of selfishness.
Service on the terms of others is an act of giving, love, and self-sacrifice.
Being a servant isn't optional for the true follower of Jesus Christ. It's central to being a follower of Jesus.
So make a conscious choice this week to walk in the Spirit and truly lay down your life for others, starting at home with your wife, your husband, your kids.
So this is a great opportunity to have a conversation with the people that you're walking closely with. You can have a conversation with your spouse, with your wife or your husband. Just sit down and ask, what would it mean to you for me to lay down my life for you? Start that conversation and seek to serve each other on the terms that Jesus Christ established for us. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. If you're enjoying this podcast, if you're getting something from it, if it's been a blessing to you, please go and leave a review. We're trying to hit that 500 review mark. We're so close. And so that would be a huge blessing if you'd go and leave a written review. Please know we, of course, read every one of them. And it just helps others understand what people are enjoying about the podcast. So if you would do that, we'd sure appreciate it. And this week, we just want to encourage you.
So remember, God is our rock and our Redeemer.
He already knows what this week holds for you. He knows exactly what you're facing.
He loves you and is for you.
So this week, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you.